All right. I will go ahead and call this Tigard City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Youth Councilor Nog.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Singh.
Here.
Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Mayor Liu.
Here. Thank you, everybody. Please stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. City Council or staff, do we have any non-agenda items this evening?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Any? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to public comments. Those wishing to call in tonight, please call in at 503-966-4101, and those wishing to comment should call in now to get into the queue. Anyone present wanting to comment should sign up at the public comment form at the front of the room, and there's a 2-minute testimony limit. There was no previous public comment from the last meeting, so there's nothing to follow up on. And I'd like to invite Chamber Board of Directors Chair Michelle Cheney to give an update for the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce tonight. Hi, welcome. And please turn on your mic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Councilors. My name is Michelle Cheney. I'm the Board Chair of the Tigard Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor to be here tonight. My favorite announcement that I've been waiting to let you all know is we do have a new CEO. And so Megan DeSalvo became our new CEO. She has over 12 years of chamber experience, and she's been a local business owner for 20 years in our community. So she's very well connected to the business community, and we look forward to having her advocate on behalf of our businesses. As you all know, we have a Leadership Tigard class. They meet today, and today's topic was Education and Technology Day in Tigard. They heard from a panel of local education leaders and went on several tours of local schools and education centers. As far as our commitment to building a strong local economy, our DEI committee meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Chamber office, and we are pleased to host the City of Tigard Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager tomorrow. We also have a Government Affairs and Public Policy Committee, and they meet on March 16th at 1:30. Any of you are invited to attend either of these meetings. We are also looking for businesses in Tigard who would like to host students for a Workforce Development Day. We are hoping that this event with our Work Ready initiatives, please reach out if you host a local business that you'd like to have students participate. As far as promoting our community is another pillar of the Chamber. We had our second Solve Downtown Tigard cleanup on March 4th. We had a little bit low of attendance because of the weather. We had 6 people attend, but we would invite you to come. It's always the first Saturday of the month from 9:30 to noon. We held our Bowl-a-Rama on the 25th. We had several companies brave the snow and come out. We had 3 winners. Studio 7 won first place, ARM Roofing had second place, and Tigard Bowl came in at 3rd place. The event was at Tigard Bowl as well, so yes, that was exciting. Also, Tigard Shining Stars event is Friday, May 5th. We look forward to having all of you attend that as well. That's at Washington Square at the Embassy Suites. Our Good Morning Tigard events, our networking and visibility pillar is every Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Please check our website for locations. And lastly, the Tigard Farmers Market update is run by the Chamber, and we are excited this year for the first year to be in the Universal Plaza. And our first day is Sunday, May 7. It's every Sunday from 9 to 1:30, and we will be there through October 29th. So we look forward to having you all come out and join us. And that concludes my update. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? No? I just also want to congratulate Whitney Green Acupuncture for 10 years of service in Tigard today, who is a member of the Chamber.
Very good.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome up Tigard High ASB Committee Chair of Spirit, Sarah Berg, who is reporting on Tigard High School activities. Welcome. Please just turn on your mic.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. I'm Sarah Berg. I'm the ASB for Spirit at Tigard High School. So basically that means I run most of the football, sporting, arts events, and anything related with that. So I'm just here to give you guys a quick update about what's going on in the school. So in terms of leadership, we have our senior class planning Powder Tough at the beginning of April, which is where we have large groups of students playing volleyball against each other just in a recreational game. The junior class is currently working on planning prom, which is going to be at the end of April, and the theme is Night Under the Stars. The HR committee is currently planning Unity Week for April, which is also a very big week in our school. We have our Big Voices Assembly, which is where we give the students the opportunity to speak about their experiences and students to really connect and understand one another. We also have Rock Your Socks World Down Syndrome Day this March 21st, I believe. We are going to be advertising that throughout the school, having people, support our fellow students and work together. In terms of sports, our dance team is leaving for Anaheim, California for the national competition. They're going to be competing in solo competitions as well as jazz, contemporary, and many different categories. So we definitely want to wish them luck. We're having their national send-off this coming weekend. Spring sports have also officially started towards the end of February. They began practicing. Girls lacrosse had their first game last night, and boys lacrosse is currently on their way to Sprague right now to compete. And then we have our first track meet tomorrow as well, which I will be there, and if anybody wants to come, we're so excited to have you all. In terms of the arts, we have Tigard Theater's play, SpongeBob the Musical, which debuted March 9th, and their final performance will be March 17th. And it's a really amazing show, and we love supporting the arts at Tigard High School, so we'd really appreciate anybody who would like to come and watch this awesome performance. We also have the band and orchestra concert coming up the 21st of March, and guitars preparing for their performance on the 23rd. We don't have a lot of opportunities to see the arts perform at our school, so taking advantage of these opportunities is really important, and it's something we really enjoy. And then lastly, in terms of service events going on in our school, I'm a part of a group as well as of over 20 other students in the school. They're part of a team called Calling a Cure, which works with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society to raise money for blood cancer research and advocacy. I'm hoping you've all heard about it. We have tried to spread the word. We have a goal of $30,000 this year, and we have raised $25,000, so we are in the home stretch, and we recently put on a 3v3 basketball tournament at our school, and we were able to raise a lot of money to go towards this program. Lastly, National Honor Society is partnering with the American Red Cross tomorrow for a blood drive. We do have a couple spots left, so if anybody wants to donate blood, we have 15 spots, and we'd let anybody walk in at this point, so we would appreciate any of you. Other than that, that's all that we have going on at Tigard High School, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you so much. It's crazy to hear about spring events and planning for prom already. Yes, Councillor Shaw.
Right. Okay, Sarah, what time's the track meet at?
The track meet is going to start at 3:45 and it'll probably go until 8 at night. So if anybody would love to stop by, watch a couple throwing, running events, we'd appreciate your support.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Next, we have Chief McAlpine with the Tigard Police Chief update. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening again, Chief Kathy McAlpine, Tigard Police Department. I know you've all been brief, but for our audience, this is a time where I report out the February dashboard. And I just felt this was not the time and place to be talking about a monthly statistics. We know that just a little over 2 weeks ago, we received, and you guys are all aware, of the OIR report, the independent review for our officer-involved shooting that happened January 6th of 2021. And that findings, recommendations were released. And so I felt that it was very important to all of you, to our community, to kind of discuss where we're at, even in the 2 weeks since that has been released. So with that, I would like to talk about that. But I'm going to start with, I'm going to use Mr. Giannaco's quote that he used on that report, if you recall, and that is, "What is done cannot be undone, but at least one can keep it from happening again," and that was by Anne Frank. I think it's appropriate. We'd all like to, one, go back in time and not even have this incident, the way and the outcome, but at least what can we do moving forward? And before anybody can heal and build trust and confidence, you have to acknowledge. And first and foremost, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the family, sorry to the community in the outcome. And I could sit there and say, in the 45-year history of this department, we've had one fatal shooting. But if you're that one outcome, that doesn't give you comfort. It isn't reassuring. But it is a point in time that I wanted to reflect on because, we've learned a lot. And again, starting with, I am so sorry, and what can I do to convey that we take this serious, that we have looked at this, that we have been receptive to the independent review. But we've been receptive from the get-go. And I'm going to go over a little bit of that so that you can all, form your opinions or ask questions. As we know from the recommendation, there were 31. And of that, 8 of them were directed outside of Tigard Police Department. As you know, we're part of the Washington County Major Crimes. We have members that are part of it. They come out and do a lot of our homicides and our officer-involved shootings. That's under the guidance and control of the Washington County District Attorney's Office. So there's recommendations for that group. There's a recommendation for the Attorney General, who was called in to assist, and that convened the grand jury. So those are things I have been communicating with the sheriff, all of the chiefs, the DA. As soon as I've gotten this information, I have always tried to pass on what I'm hearing so that we can all learn from this, that it doesn't you don't have to experience yourself before you look at your own department and see how you're structured or the things that you do. But there are 22 that were directed for the PD specifically. And a lot of them have to do with the internal review and the lack of transparency or the lack of sensing that it wasn't a deeper dive. And part of it is, if it's not in writing, it doesn't happen. And so having that conversation with Mr. Giannaco and trying to say, okay, from an organization that's the size of Portland to, it's the size of Tigard, I can go outside my door and have the conversation and say, I need this, this, and this, and this. I understand now looking forward that nobody gets those conversations. You don't know that they happen if it's not in writing. I still would have those face-to-face. I would still give those directions, but I understand the importance of memorializing it. 15 of the 22 have been implemented. There's only 3 that fundamentally, it's going to take something bigger. It's labor agreements, changing of concepts. But of those 15 we have, I think a few of those policies are just in draft form because there's a few people to review it, and I don't anticipate any obstacles. So we are moving forward. There's, and I forgot to ask Eric. Eric, can you go ahead and move the slide? Keep up with me here. So those are it. Sorry, you can follow along. So 15 we have incorporated. But more importantly is the next slide, please. So this is, all I wanted to do was do a picture, and I can talk to this. And again, some of you are inheriting this, others you were on the council, you've been here from the get-go. But in the last 2 years, what have we done? What have we learned? When we knew it, could we do something? And if nothing else, I hope that you see that we did not just accept the outcome, that there were things, concrete things that we could do. At the same time, after the killing of George Floyd, Public Safety Advisory, you said we wanted to look at Tigard Police Department. How is our department as opposed to Minneapolis or somewhere else? Public Safety Advisory Board was started up 1 month later. We hadn't even built relationships when the killing of Jacob McDuff happened. And so to put it in context, they were with us for 18 months through our department, but also as we got information, it was passed on to the Public Safety Advisory Board. But one of the things we knew right from the get-go, as you all know, is that we had a failing camera system. And in that incident that night, we had one dashboard camera that only caught a little bit of this. For transparency, for accountability, for just getting the information, we knew that that wasn't acceptable. City Manager Reimer was new. It made sense to him. To the council at the time, absolutely no-brainer. Public Safety Advisory Board said, absolutely, we think you should. You acted without waiting for the next budget cycle. You found the money, we did it. And we've had them ever since. And I think the community's better for it, and our officers support it as well. The other big incident we did in the middle there is the South City's mental health response team. We're part of the Washington County mental health team. And you hear me every month talk about 67% of our calls have a mental health, drug, substance use disorder call. That is what we're dealing with out here. We knew that Washington County mental health teams were going call to call. They weren't available enough time. So we recreated that. The South Cities, Sherwood, Tualatin, King City, and Tigard pooled together to have a South City supported by Washington County. When that mental health professional and team is off, they come down and help us. That has been well received, both from our community and to the officers. But just one more piece. The other is, in the bottom left, is showing that we actually did some very concrete, specific training when it comes to barricaded subjects, and in particular, barricaded vehicles, which was what that was that night, and giving very specific direction of what we want to do, what we don't want to do, and then also doing some physical training on that. And then one of the recommendations in ORI was to really kind of memorialize that training into policy, which you sometimes don't, but I understood the importance, and we have done that. The other is a drone. The drone program we've used in many instances. In that garage would have happened that night. It's hard saying if they could fly that low, but we have seen it in other calls where a man is armed with a rifle reported to in a vehicle, and we were able to put a drone right in front of that windshield and be able to see exactly what is in his hands, which was just a cell phone. And so we were able to resolve that peacefully. So again, it's another piece of tool and technology. The last, and it may be as simple at its form, but it is, to me, the crux of this. And that is de-escalation. There's components. Time, distance, cover, communication. That's a half of a poster of what you see we put throughout the department. For those in law enforcement, they know, they've heard me say, we can all cite the range rules. Never point a gun that you're not willing to shoot, all of those things. I wanted to create that in our department that culture of assessing those 4 things. Because at the very core of that incident that night is that time was on our side. We were in control. Time was on our side, and we initiated contact. All of this is all good for the next scenario, but time is on our side, and we own it. And we are trying to move forward and put all of these things in place. I stand by our department. We are a solid, well-trained, officers. This has affected all of us, not to the degree as the family, but nobody would like to go through this again if we don't have to. It's my job to lead us through this, to be accountable first and foremost, and I stand before you ready to accept that from day one, and I continue, but I will also continue to grow, learn, put things in place when we're made aware of it, but I also stand by the department for where they are today. So happy to answer any questions. This is not done. Next slide, please. Again, we have our transparency page. A lot of times you know that we have our dashboard there. The OIR recommendations, response, all of that is on here. They updated what we've done so we can be held accountable. We can track it. Anybody can, is there. I imagine that the media, they tend to take my report outs. We will put what I have said tonight on that as well. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Council President Hu?
It's more of a comment, so thank you so much, Chief, for providing the overview. Councillor Wolf and I, as you know, met with you a couple weeks ago and to discuss this in more detail. And we were scheduled for 1 hour, but we went over by 90 minutes, and we learned a lot. So, and I just want to say I really appreciate you welcoming us to talk about this, and your willingness to talk to any member of the public about this. And I understand that offer still stands. And so I talked to community members, and one question, and we talk about this, but I just want to say it because I got asked, is about the recruitment standard. And given the difficulties the police department is having all over the country about recruitment, the lack of poor candidates, he was just concerned about the standards that we are using. And I assure him that I talked with you, and we are not lowering our standards despite our creative way to recruit more qualified candidates. And fun fact, I actually get a Facebook ad from Hillsborough Police Department recruitment. I was thinking I may not be the right target audience for it, but that's just fun fact. So anyway, I just want to say that we're not lowering our standards, and despite the difficulties.
No, you'll actually hear me say it. I'll say it for you. We are not lowering our standards.
Thank you.
But I think, again, where the crux of it comes from the OIR recommendation of a background review, because as we know, what Officer Maldonado went to go to a different agency, his whole background was given to the media, and so there was questions and concerns. And as a chief coming in, you inherit the department for whatever reasons were there. You don't go back to there and say, what were they hired, what was their standards. I met with every single one of the department, and we had just a conversation. What brought you to Tigard? What did you do before there? So there was a getting to know icebreaker. But what I can tell you, what I'm responsible for is who I bring in. And it's very important, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm the final one. We have many processes to include the background, to include the psychological, and I've even been challenged where somebody I really liked and just didn't pass a step, and I have to be very disciplined. There's these independent reviews are there for a reason. And I was part of the Oregon Backgrounders Association as a representative for the Oregon Association as Chief of Police, and we talked about through police reform is making sure that all the departments have a minimum standard of what it should be. And we are above that, but at least I was in that discussion. So, you know, moving forward, that assurance and observation from OIR is I know the importance of who I bring into this organization. And while it's my final decision, I don't make that decision in a vacuum. And I have a lot of check and balances that are in place that will remain in place. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chief. And I also want to thank you personally, but also the police department for your communication, your transparency, and commend you on the 15 recommendations. That moved so quickly. Also, I know that both with City Manager Reimer, myself, and the mayor, part of the former City Council, well, the City Manager is still here, thankfully, but it was important for us to recognize that the cameras were needed for the body-worn cameras, and that the funding need to be there. So recognizing how quickly you also move with the tools and communication and ensuring that that was going to be in place. And then also memorializing the policy. I think that's key. And then also I want to put a shout out because I know a couple of us have been a part of the Community Academy, which I believe there are openings currently. So if those are interested in the community, you can participate. I believe it's 10 weeks, but you learn quite a bit about the city, about the police department, and things such that you had on there, the drones, the body-worn cameras, and even being in scenarios where there's some uninspected action that happens. So just want to put a shout out for those in the community to attend potentially the Community Academy.
And just to piggyback on that, Councilor Shaw, we've been very intentional in encouraging people who, you don't need to be a fan of your police department. In fact, I would say if you are skeptical or you need more information, we want you there. We want to show you. You can challenge us. That's usually the opening remarks. You've heard me say that is, you know, ask us, or how do we compare to what you hear in the news, and ask those tough questions, because we're only better together when we do. And so again, yes, if you have your doubts, if you've had negative experiences, one way to come in and learn more and share your experiences and challenges is to come to the Community Academy if you can commit to that kind of time. So thank you.
Thank you. I will also back up and say we had many constructive conversations at the Community Academy with a wide variety of people who support the police department and don't support. There was a woman who openly admitted she was terrified of police officers, and her son was a police officer, but she attended wanting to learn more and felt much more comfortable with approaching a police officer and talking to them. And so it was a bold step for her to take, to be in a room with police officers for 10 weeks. But it's really informative and helpful and opening and welcome to ask all of the questions and have transparent conversations. So anyone listening tonight or anyone in the room, highly encourage you to apply to join. So
yeah, it's you know, trust goes both ways, but it is imperative for a community to trust their law enforcement department. And when that falters or shatters, we are not better for that as a community or our effectiveness. And so when that has wavered, it takes a lot to build that back up. And so we have to be vigilant. It has to be a priority, which it is of mine and you know, and of our department. And we take those steps. I would love to nothing more than not be up here today to talk about this, but it is what it is. We own it, and I'm here to move forward, to help a family mend if I can, and take ultimate responsibility. So thank you.
thank you. I don't see any additional questions. Thank you, Chief. City Recorder Krager, I didn't see any written public comments that made it by the timeline.
That's correct. We received no written comments, and we do, let's see if we have any phone comments now. Let's see.
Oh. Let's do the ones in person first before we move to the phone.
Yes, we do have one. Does anyone else want to sign up to speak?
We do have one person who signed up to speak in person today. April Savvy, would you like to come up? And just so everyone's aware, public comment is an opportunity for us to receive comments from the public. We don't typically have a whole lot of dialogue, but we work hard with the city staff to make sure you get a response. If you could turn on your microphone and state your name for the record. Welcome.
Sure. My name is April Sabby. Good evening, Mayor Lube and honorable city council members. My name is April Sabby, and I'm a 30-year Tigard resident, employed over 20 years at Oregon Public Employees Retirement System, HOA president 10 years for Timbercrest, 35 private condo community in Tigard, and current president of Pacific Northwest Family Circle, a group of family members who have lost a loved one to police. And I'm here tonight with my friend Mary Barbie, also a Tigard resident who has lost a loved one to police, and also a Pacific Northwest Family Circle member. My husband was killed by police January 12th, 2018 during a mental crisis, and I'm here tonight in support of the Maria McDuff and the Jacob McDuff case. I'm happy to hear Chief McAlpine talk about the OAR report and some of the issues and transparency that's going on there. The critical incident review that was done, like she said, was recently completed, and I'm here tonight to my effort is to make sure that that report doesn't get swept under the carpet, that there is some transparency and a response to it. And so I am very happy to hear that not only the chief of police has looked at it, but is responding to it, and the council is aware of it and clued in on it. The goal of my public testimony, because I agree, if it's not in writing or if it's not video recorded, it doesn't exist. If people have conversations on the side or at lunch, we don't really know about that. So I'm here just to give public testimony with the goal of public safety and officer safety. As a Tigard resident, I lived in Tigard when Jacob McDuff was killed, and I was deeply concerned about the protests that followed and the way that the city chose to handle it. I appreciate also that I see many sheriffs here tonight, and I see that they're also on the agenda tonight, that their mission statement is to do the right thing with their strategic goal of being accountable in our commitment to our team and community. And in my experience, when there's multi-agency responses, that the mission statements and the goals get influenced by other agencies and emotions and things. And so it becomes hard to manage, which was the case in my husband's scenario. But by understanding, discussing, and changing policy based around the critical analysis report recommendations, Tigard can take a bold step forward towards a safer community, including safety of all the community residents and police officers. So I'm hopeful that the mayor and the city council members can take this request as a call for action during Women's History Month by listening to mothers and wives, demonstrating fierce leadership, and finding less lethal alternatives in resolving mental health crises. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and I'm sorry for both of your loss. We appreciate your testimony. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any phone callers in the queue today?
No phone calls at this time.
Okay. Do we have anyone signed up to give us testimony by video?
Yes, we do. We have 2 people.
Okay. If you could have the first person go ahead and state their name.
Okay, I'm going to have Barbara Kenny start off.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Barbara.
Barbara, you might need to unmute your mic or turn on your camera.
Mr. Thornburg, maybe Barbara can work on getting her camera to work, and we can have the other person testify.
Yeah, that's going to be Maria McDuff. I'm going to enable her now. And, Maria, you're on and you need to unmute your microphone.
Welcome, Maria.
Yeah. Mayor Lubin, council members, my name is Maria McDuff. I'm a retired physician, a medical doctor living in Santa Barbara, California, where I raised my 4 children. I am the mother of Jacob McDuff, who enjoyed living in his new hometown of Tigard for the last 9 months of his young life. As you know, on January 6, 2021, while locked in his parked truck in a mental health crisis and posing no threat, he was shot 8 times in the back and killed by officers of the Tigard Police Department. I do want to acknowledge Chief McAlpine's remarks this evening regarding her subsequent actions and what has taken place as far as improvements in the department. I'm very reassured and encouraged by it. And I hope to keep in touch with her for ongoing improvements. As you know also, as part of my settlement agreement with the city, I commissioned and funded an independent review of the incident of Jacob's death by the ORI group. The review was authored by Michael Janato, and it reveals multiple deficits of the investigations of both the Washington Major Crimes Team and the Internal Review Board of the Tigard Police Department. For both, it offered 31 recommendations for improvements, as Chief McAlpine pointed out. And I would like to say that I am really very encouraged by the fact that those that apply to the Tigard Police Department have been mostly looked at and improved upon, especially for me, the de-escalation training and techniques and public safety, and the use of force, the use of deadly force. So at this point, I would like to ask all of you, as community members of Tigard, members of the City Council, and the Tigard Police Department, to consider the following requests I have in memory of my son, Jacob. Number 1, the city should invite the independent review author, Michael Janato, to present and discuss his report to the City Council. I know that Chief McAlpine has discussed it, but maybe the city needs to hear it from the author himself. We requested this last month, but to date, no response from the City Council. Number 2, the city should ask Chief McAlpine to make the list in public, the list of improvements that she has made so far in the police department. Again, especially with the de-escalation and the deadly use of force, as far as I think are so important. I really appreciate what Chief McAlpine has done. I know how difficult it must be. I know it's difficult for the police also. I appreciate that. It's just that I really miss my son. I really miss him. Number 3, the city and the community members should urge the Washington County District Attorney, Kevin Barton, to release the grand jury findings that led to the decision not to indict Officer Maldonado or others in the death of my son. This is the point that Janato makes in his recommendation number 11. And I also want you to note that public access to grand jury findings in police cases of fatal shootings has clear precedence in Multnomah County under the district attorney, Mike Schmidt. It can be done, and I think it should be done. And number 4, finally, I recommend that the city establish a civilian review board to ensure oversight and feedback regarding the police department's ongoing efforts towards improvements. It shouldn't have to take an extensive independent review paid for by the bereaved family to expose the readily apparent flaws in a police department and the state judicial system. I implore you to consider my request, remembering Jacob's senseless death. Truly a communal outrage. We can and we should do better when we all work together. I thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and speaking with us. Mr. Thornburg, is Barbara Kenny available?
We can try to put her on again and see if she is there. Barbara, you are able to talk and use your camera now.
Barbara, I know that sometimes testifying by video can be tricky. I'm happy to provide the phone number if you'd like to call in instead. That phone number again is 503-966-4101. And Mr. Thornburg, if you see someone enter the call line, can you let us know and we can return to public comment, perhaps after the consent agenda?
Of course.
Okay. We will now move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may also request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Tonight, we have a local contract review board, IGA, with ODOT, which feels like a lot of government speak. It's an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for Templeton Elementary and Tuolumne Middle School Safe Routes to School program. Are there any questions or a motion?
No questions, but I'm happy to make a motion, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved by unanimous vote of the council. Mr. Thornburg, have we had anyone enter the phone call in?
Yes, I think I have Barbara now and I can put her in.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do you want me to do it right now? Okay, Barbara, you're on.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome, Barbara.
Okay. Yes, thank you, especially for the courtesy of offering that phone number right away. That was very helpful. So anyway, my name's Barbara Kenny. I don't live in Tigard, but I do live in Springfield, Oregon. And unfortunately, I've had a very similar experience to Maria McDuff. My child, Stacy Kenny, was shot and killed by Springfield police on March 31st, 2019. The thing I think I would like the council to know is that these events are much more common than you might think. I'm also a member of Pacific Northwest Family Circle, and I probably have 24 people now that I consider friends who I know have lost loved ones to police shootings. I have been a friend of Maria's for probably just over a year now, even though we've never met in person. I feel very close to her. I think she did a wonderful job this evening testifying before you all and presenting her feelings, and I appreciate you listening, and I hope you take them to heart. The reason I wanted to call was because in our case, we also had an OIR report by the same author, Michael Ganacco. We had 33 recommendations, and I thought it would be useful to let you know what happened in our case. I appreciate Chief McAlpine jumping immediately on this and taking the bull by the horn, so to speak. In our case, we had a new police chief that was hired about 2 years after our incident. And the first thing he did on his very first day of the job, he called me to offer his condolences, which I sincerely appreciated. So I do appreciate Chief McAlpine's doing this, what she's been working on. What I would like to offer, though, which you haven't said much about, is these recommendations regarding the county level things and on the district attorney and the sheriff. And I realize that's sort of out of your purview, but I would urge you to advocate for these changes that Mr. Ganacco has recommended. For example, in our case, in 2022, based on the OIR report, the investigation protocols for the Lane County equivalent of the Washington County Major Crimes Investigations Team, they were updated for the first time since inception 15 years ago. And that was a direct result of our OIR report. Also in 2022, the investigation team's governing body, which is known as the Planning Authority, authorized the District Attorney's Office to lead a small working group to prepare an after-actions review on each use of deadly force investigation to ensure that the investigation protocols are correctly followed. And then in 2023, they actually did that. The very first after-actions review of an officer-involved shooting investigation was presented in a public meeting. The team was led by the Chief Assistant District Attorney from Lane County. I think he had 2 other people in his team, and they reviewed the entire report that came out of the investigation. They discovered several points that were protocols actually were not followed, and they suggested some remedial actions. So I am hopeful that is going to continue, that improvement in that continues. The other thing I would like to add, and this was the same in our report, and I really would encourage you and Chief McAlpine to think a lot about this, and I know it's difficult, but this issue about waiting 48 hours or longer to interview the shooting officer, that needs to be reconsidered, as Mr. Ganacco said. And the other thing is considering the entirety of the event. That is also a common finding where they only consider the instant that the trigger is pulled, and that does not take into account all of the tactical decisions made leading up to that point, and that's also important to consider. So those are the 2 things I would urge you also to consider, in addition to all of the really great things that I heard Chief McAlpine say. So anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, and I'm a friend of April's and Mary's as well, and they live in your community there, and I hope you are able to move forward with this and make Tigard a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling in today, Barbara. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the Washington County Sheriff Report, and we have Washington County Sheriff Pat Garrett here today. Thank you so much. If you could turn on your microphone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. I just want to take a moment and extend, along with the Undersheriff, my great respect and honor to Ms. Savi, Ms. McDuff, and Barbara. Words are inadequate to measure up to their loss, but we are extraordinarily sorry for their loss. We appreciate their comments, and it's actually really helpful for us to be here tonight, to be part of this, so thank you. We might go to the slide if that's okay. Really the focus for us tonight is to provide you an update on county-wide services that the Sheriff's Office provides, and we might jump to the next slide. Accomplishing our mission and keeping our community safe really depends on our partnerships with community, neighborhoods, community groups of all manner, and agency partners like the City of Tigard and the Tigard Police Department. And we rely on the Tigard Police Department really in some manner every day. And it's our pleasure to work with Chief McAlpine and everybody on the police department team. Slide, please. We draw our mission at the sheriff's office literally from statute, which says the sheriff is the conservator of the peace in the county that they work in. It's not just getting the job done, but it's how we get it done that's super important. And so we attach our organizational values to that, which are strongly aligned with serving community and building a team. Our strategic goals are also there for you that support fostering professionalism, building trust with community, and fiscal responsibility. We know that's really important to our community as well. Slide, please. There are literally hundreds of statutes that direct specific duties to a sheriff's office, and some of them are on this slide for you. The two at the top in black are really in common with every law enforcement officer in the state of Oregon. And just as Tigard officers support or have duties that are unique to Tigard by virtue of like your city code, a state statute assigns specific functions to a sheriff's office that cities in the state do not do, and those are in blue there for you. Those are unique to a sheriff's office, and I would just take the fourth blue one down the blue, kind of the blue colored list. Execute civil processes and court orders. Why don't you just jump to the next slide? We get questions about what does that mean? Well, that really means serving, ensuring that the civil court process functions in our county. So we have about 7 deputies that serve civil documents, and I'll just tell you one example of where our civil service and like Tigard Police intersect. So we serve all the restraining and protective orders in the county, but if there is probable cause to believe that one of those protective orders was violated, then a Tigard City officer is going to take enforcement action. They're going to make an arrest, and they're going to bring that person to jail. The courts have been very clear about when there is probable cause to believe a protection order has been violated. They expect enforcement action. Slide, please. Want to take some time to talk about our jail. So, as you might know, we have a bit of a staffing, I think it's fair to say we have a staffing crisis in our jail. We have 20 vacancies. I just administered the oath of office to 3 new jail deputies yesterday, who will be in training for about 10 months before they can work by themselves. Back in June, we came to a point where we just didn't have enough staff to maintain a fully functional jail and had to close 1 housing unit. Hence the bullet in the middle of the slide. We went from 572 beds to 508 beds. Keep in mind, as a facility, we have the 2nd smallest jail in the state. Our county's just grown leaps and bounds for a long time. So we do have a small jail. It's now made smaller with our staffing situation, and we are going to hire a marketing firm. We have a couple of folks that are working full-time on recruiting. We have monthly or bi-monthly open houses. We had 40 folks show up for an open house, a recruiting workshop here just a week or 2 ago. So we're working overtime to make up that difference and get that vacancy rate closed. But like many sectors, it's just a tough time right now. You can see at the bottom in 2021, the jail did 384 bookings for Tigard officers who brought an individual to jail in custody, and that went up in 22 because we lifted in 2022 in April. We lifted those COVID era booking restrictions, so we accept all probable cause warrants, all probable cause arrests. We had some criteria in place, as did most jails in Oregon, because of the CDC and OHA recommendations on congregate settings. Just comparative, those annual bookings for 2022, Beaverton had 2,381 bookings they brought to our jail, and Hillsborough had 2,088, just to kind of give you a sense for those other cities. Slide, please. COVID impacts. So our staff did a fantastic job to limit the spread of COVID during the pandemic. We have almost done completely away with mandatory masking. The only exception is in medical settings, of course, and then folks who are, of course, symptomatic. We returned to accepting all arrests and all warrants in April of 2022. We did have some defense attorneys that didn't feel like they wanted to come down in person and meet with their clients in the jail, so we facilitated phone call contact with them during that time. And we are seeing, as we see in our community, a higher rate of individuals with behavioral health issues and substance use disorders. We are seeing that in jail as well. In the summer of 2022, we had 2 different incidents where adults in custody became unconscious. We revived them with using naloxone and found out, later it was as a result of a an opioid or fentanyl overdose. That is just something that's a new risk that we're having to manage in our jail. Slide, please. Mitigating or navigating the kind of the effects. So COVID brought us a court slowdown, and we have more than doubled the number of Measure 11 charged adults in custody who are in jail during COVID because of that court slowdown. And so they're just a more challenging group to manage, which kind of compounds our recruiting and retention challenges, at least on the jail side. But we remain focused on on programs. And we know, because we measure individuals against themselves throughout their history, their incarceration history. Individuals who complete recommended programs, that's classes about cognitive decision making, job skills, of course, alcoholics counseling, drug counseling, they have a markedly lower rate of recidivism if they finish programs. So we're continuing to focus on that, and we were bolstered by the Community Corrections Center, the Work Release Center. They also have a range of programs. That's really important, part of our running a safe jail and serving our community in the best way. Slide, please. And I will ask Under Sheriff John Cook to talk a bit about our interagency teams.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening. I'm going to talk about our interagency teams here in Washington County. Like the Sheriff started off, we have really good partnerships with all the city police departments, and Tigard is no exception. In a lot of these interagency teams, we pool our resources together. It not only helps us with our police officers and deputies on the street, but it also helps our communities have a more consistent service across all of our jurisdictions. By pooling the resources, we're also able to obtain grants for large-scale equipment. For instance, with our crash reconstruction team, they were able to get a Faro scanner, which is a 3D scanner that can recreate not only complex crash scenes, but also crime scenes and critical incidents. And it helps present information to the district attorney's office. The sheriff's office manages a lot of these interagency teams just so we can coordinate that countywide response. Next slide, please. So the first couple teams we're going to talk about are our tactical negotiations team and our crisis negotiations unit. These two teams work in tandem to really bring tools, training, and expertise to very complex and dangerous situations to help de-escalate them. We consider them an escalation in safety by being able to slow down many of these scenes. Our crisis negotiators are able to de-escalate the situation while our tactical teams have resources out there to generally contain them and bring them to a safe resolution more often than not. So when we look at our stats in 2021, the tactical team responded to over 128 calls for service. That's throughout all of Washington County. Out of those, they detained over 124 people. There was only one of those incidents that resulted in injury due to a use of force. So they're really able to, those are the most complex and dangerous situations, and they're able to generally slow those down and more often than not bring those to a peaceful resolution. Next slide, please. The next team we're going to talk about is our criminal apprehension team. This is a team that the Sheriff's Office partners with the U.S. Marshal Service. The U.S. Marshal Service has a very similar mission, and it's kind of two components to it. One is to seek out wanted fugitives. The marshals do it on a nationwide kind of purview. We do it countywide. The marshals also look at registered sex offenders on the federal level. Our CAT team searches out and contacts all registered sex offenders throughout all of Washington County jurisdictions. During COVID, they were not able to get to everybody just due to some of the restrictions, but they were able to get to some of the highest level offenders. Now that we're back into normal operations, they're trying to contact every one of those sex offenders throughout all of our communities to make sure that they're in compliance with any court regulations that they have. In 2021, the team contacted over 1,100 folks on the community, and they made about 300 arrests. Next slide, please. The chief had talked about this team, but it's one we're going to talk about as well on the countywide level. Our Washington County Mental Health Response Team has been serving the county for over 10 years, doing a great job in bringing resources out to those in crisis in the field. By pairing a mental health clinician with a police officer and a deputy, they're able to get those services out there and help de-escalate some very complex situations. In recent years, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Tigard, Tualatin, and Sherwood have all come on as very strong partners, so we can serve all of Washington County equally across all of our jurisdictions. In 2021, the team responded to over 2,400 calls for service. and 200 of those were in the city of Tigard. Another key point that we look at with these teams is they're responding to folks in crisis, and a lot of times they're very volatile. They only had 16 uses of force incidents out of all of those calls for service. Very, very low numbers for dealing with folks that are experiencing mental health crisis. And it's just the way they're able to de-escalate these very difficult calls and bring them to a peaceful resolution. Next slide, please. Like we've talked about across jurisdictional boundaries, we support the Tigard Police, they support us. We're going to talk about a couple of those incidents. In 2021, the Crisis Negotiations Unit were able to respond to the city to help with a suicidal subject that was on a railroad trestle. After several hours of negotiations, they were able to get the person successfully down without any incident. A lot of these incidents that occur don't make the news. We don't hear about them because they're able to resolve them peacefully. And that's always the goal of all of the teams and services. The next incident we're going to talk about was in May of 2022. We have drones as well that work with the city of Tigard. If their drones are not available, we'll bring ours in, and if ours aren't available, they'll assist us as well. This was one of those instances in May that there was a couple suspects that had fled. We were able to get up a drone with a thermal imagery, and they were able to help the canines on the ground find these folks and bring them into custody with that incident. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation.
Love to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Yes, Council President Hu.
Thank you so much for being here. Nice to meet you, and thank you for being an important partner with Tigard Police and all the law enforcement agency in the region. So recently I attended a social, I'm a lawyer, so I'm a lawyer social, and there was a lawyer there who helps victims of sex trafficking. And he informed me, surprisingly, that not too many law enforcement officers are trained in detecting or recognizing sex trafficking. So I'm just wondering what kind of program you have, if any, in the region, either by yourself or coordinating with other police office departments on addressing sex trafficking in the county.
Our detectives do work with other regional detectives throughout Washington County, and they'll do specific sex trafficking missions. So they'll traffic the folks that are soliciting for sex, as well as trying to protect the victims that are trafficked. And so they do those periodically throughout Washington County.
So there are special training involved for detecting those kind of crimes?
We have detectives that are trained to work on those cases.
Okay.
Councilor, I will just acknowledge that we have room to improve when it comes to just every single deputy that works in our community. I think we have some room for improvement as far as training on that. But as the undersheriff said, we do have detectives who they understand the dynamics of human trafficking, of sex trafficking, and they do these stings. They get on social media, and we are able from time to time to rescue somebody. But the forces at play, as you, I'm sure, know a bit about, they're just so strong. It is it's hugely challenging to rescue people, but our detectives do work those cases.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Youth Councilor Nog. That's fine. We're here for him. Please ask your questions.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually really good timing because in our psychology class we were kind of talking about mental health response and local law enforcement, and we had a couple of questions that I think I would be able to take back to the class. So one of the things we were talking about is there use of solitary confinement? There is.
Yes, there is. We use segregation when individuals who are in jail custody are too dangerous to be with other people. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and we can't have somebody in segregation indefinitely. They get evaluated by medical, by leadership, by sergeants, and they can absolutely come out of segregation if they're willing to follow the rules and not just fight other people all the time. That's really what it is. It comes down to a safety requirement to have people in segregation.
If I could add something to that really quick. And those folks that are in segregation do get out into like the community rooms, but they're let out by themselves because it would be a danger to other folks.
Are there ever like limits on how long the segregation can go on?
Yes, there are. It's case dependent, and we have county council attorneys who advise us on that. My apologies, and we will research this and get back to your city council with some specifics. But yes, there are limits. Somebody can't be on segregation forever.
Okay. So my other one was, I saw that in the presentation, substance abuse was categorized differently than mental health. I think according to the DSM, substance abuse is considered a mental health disorder. Are there any like differences in the protocols of differentiating between mental health and substance abuse in engaging?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Are you talking about in the jail environment or?
Both, I guess.
Yeah. Well, in jail, when we are processing somebody in jail, we have a extensive medical interview. They are interviewed by a registered nurse that traces to the extent they want to share their medical history. And we identify chronic illnesses and can get on top of treatment that way to include substance use disorder, mental illness. Couldn't agree with you more. Substance use disorder changes the brain. It does cause brain damage, and we treat that in the jail. When it comes to the patrol side, the enforcement side.
Yeah, I would say we definitely take that into consideration in our actions. And a lot of times it's going to determine which route somebody's going to go, whether they need to go to a substance abuse center or whether they need mental health treatment.
So if somebody is refusing mental health, is force ever used in getting the person into treatment?
Only as a result of a civil commitment order. Okay, that's number one. Thank you. Gosh, you're asking fantastic questions. Number two is if a police officer believes that someone's conduct is placing them or someone else in imminent threat of physical injury, then we make what we call a police officer hold. Or if it's a mental health response team that's directing that, the clinician can do what's called a director's hold. They have a master's degree in clinical mental health social work, and they have relationships with hospitals, and they can put a director's hold requiring the officer or the deputy to take that person to a hospital.
Okay. I have two more. What counts as a high-risk situation?
In regards to like the tactical team, is that what you're
Yes.
Okay. So there are risk analysis that they look at and they do scoring in order to determine, are there weapons involved? Are there, what is somebody's criminal history? Things of that nature, and that as well as the actions that are being displayed at that time.
Okay, thank you. And my last one was, I know that there is a shortage of defense attorneys in Oregon. So is every inmate guaranteed a phone call with a defense attorney? And if so, are there also translators available?
Yes, they are guaranteed to have contact, normally by phone, with an attorney. And technology has come so far these days. We have tablets that can, if we don't have mostly it's Spanish, right? That's mostly what we have. And we have staff that speak Spanish and attorneys. We have an attorney list of Spanish-speaking attorneys or attorneys that speak other languages available at the jail to help us connect that person with that culturally specific defense attorney. But if we don't have an attorney that speaks that language, we have Language Line. We have another technological tool, which the name escapes me, but their technology has come a huge way to help us bridge that gap and get that language that we need to get with the person in custody.
And we get a printout of all the different languages that are utilized through the Language Line, and it is just fascinating to see how many different languages are spoken here in Washington County.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for not letting us off the hook.
Councilor Wolf?
Thank you, and those were great questions. Yeah, I thought maybe you would cover mine in that. So just a couple things. Your office, Sheriff Garrett, supplied some information I was curious about, back to bookings, where Hillsborough and Beaverton landed, and I appreciated the explanation of COVID, which makes complete sense. So my question is, I tend to, what are those trend lines So the data points of 21, what I'm curious about, and COVID makes it very challenging to really, kind of look over a period of time recently, but are there particular trends in the work you're doing that pop, that are concerned? I know Chief McAlpine addresses those, within the city. And so that's kind of one part. And then if those needs are something that you're wanting to focus on, I also recognize the county and its, communication about budget cuts and concerns. And if that's, how would that impact you, or is that a concern as well? So if that all makes sense, those are my questions.
Thank you for that. So as you know, we're down one housing unit, and huge sympathy to our commissioners who have to make some very challenging decisions. If we have to go down in a second pod, close a second pod, then that's going to put our ability to book everybody at risk. And our jail serves every police department in the county, as you know. We serve defense attorneys, prosecutors. We serve our health and human services. We have our health specialists in our jails serving people in custody and helping connect them to resources when they get released. So I have concern about that. An interesting trend we've been measuring since we returned to booking all probable cause and warrant arrests. So anyone who is under arrest who comes to jail, total bookings are down 16% compared to pre-COVID. And this is speculation on my part, but I think it's a combination of Measure 110, so just getting somebody who has user amounts of illegal controlled substance, they're not going to jail before they were. And we're not stopping single taillights, single headlights on cars, and so that can lead to a drunk driving arrest, for example. On one hand, that's bad because then we don't catch them. But on the other hand, I think there are fewer arrests as a result of that. There are court decisions which limit how the kind of questions a police officer can ask at a traffic stop. I think all those combined, we are seeing fewer bookings. But as I said, we also have the second smallest jail in the state. It's made a little smaller with the housing unit down. So those are thoughts I have. Thank you.
I appreciate that you touched on Measure 110 because we talk with our chief often about the impacts that we see here in Tigard, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the impacts or maybe unintended consequences of Measure 110 on our community and individuals with substance abuse issues.
Yeah, we're just seeing more. I won't blame Measure 110, but you can't ignore it at the same time. Rates of substance use disorder are just up. They're skyrocketing. We see them more in our jail. In my view, Measure 110 has normalized drug use in a way that it was not normalized before. And so, yeah, I'm absolutely concerned about the rates of increased substance use disorder and a scarcity of services, really, to help people overcome that challenge, which is enormous. I have family who have struggled with substance use disorder, and probably most of us have. And it is an enormously huge challenge to overcome. But yeah, we are seeing more substance use disorder just everywhere, in my view.
If I could add to that, sure. The other social issues that come along with a lot of substance abuse issues are seen with drug use as well, whether it's driving under the influence of intoxicants, things of that nature. And so we have seen an increase of people that are impaired by other substances than alcohol, whether it's methamphetamines, heroin, things of that nature.
Thank you. Additional questions? Thank you so much for coming. It's nice to see you in person. We appreciate it. I'm going to take a bit of an unusual step. I know we've had what I feel like has been kind of a heavy start to our meeting, and I'd actually like to take a 5-minute recess to sort of take a break and reset and come back. So we will come back at 7:50. Guaranteed maximum price contract amendment. And we have Senior Project Engineer Billings Beck to give the staff report. Welcome back.
Hi, good evening. It's so good to be back after last week's in-depth discussion of the Guaranteed Maximum Price contract amendment for this project. And we are happy to entertain any additional questions if council has reflected and come up with anything else they'd like to discuss. Otherwise, we would like to ask for your approval of the GMP contract amendment.
Do you have a question, Councillor Wolf?
Nope. I wanted to say thank you. I thought it was just really appreciated all the information. And with that, I move to approve Reservoir 18 and Pump Station GMP contract amendment as presented.
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I just want anybody who may be listening, we had a very in-depth meeting last week on the details of this, so this is not something we are just rubber stamping through. It's a significant amount of money and a significant water project that we heard a lot about last week. So if you're interested, please take a look at the meeting last week. So it has been moved and seconded to approve Reservoir 18 and Pump Station GMP contract amendment as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The motion is adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a public hearing to consider resolution to add Recycle Plus to solid waste hauler services. So with that, I am going to open the public hearing. Anyone who wants to testify by phone or in person, please call to get in the queue now at 503-966-4101, or there is a sign-up sheet at the front of the room. And we have City Attorney Rajala here to give us a staff report.
Thank you, Council. So this is the culmination of several discussions that we've had regarding residential recycling, the Recycle Plus program. So as a refresher, this item before you tonight will adopt fees, setting rates for the Recycle Plus program for our two franchised haulers, Pride and Waste Management. With this program, residential customers would be able to recycle #1 plastic clamshells, textiles, and light bulbs, and as well as plastic film curbside. The monthly fee is $2.50 with a $9.25 collection charge each collection. So this adopts those fees. The haulers have indicated that hopefully this program is up and running May 1st. The rates will be effective April 17th to allow some transition time. So I see representatives from our two haulers are here in the audience if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions as well.
Thank you so much. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or video requests to comment?
Not at this time.
Okay. City Recorder Krager, did we have any written comments? No. Okay. Okay. And we do have two people to sign up in person today. First, I'd like to invite up Kristen Lechner with Pride Disposal.
Good evening, Mayor Lube and councilors. Nice to see you again. I'm Kristen Lechner. I'm the president and one of the owners of Pride Disposal Company. We're a fourth-generation family-owned business located in Sherwood, and we provide services to the city of Tigard as well as 5 other cities in the county and the county itself. So as one of the 2 franchised haulers in Tigard, I just wanted to speak with you all tonight and let you know that I'm excited to offer these expanded services in Tigard. We've always worked in partnership with you to provide solid waste services that the community needs, and this proposed service we view as a response to a need that we've heard from our community. Throughout the years, we've worked with recycling processors and our local government partners to expand the list of curbside recyclables based on what could be accepted, sorted, and responsibly recycled. And for years, we've taken hard-to-recycle items at our recycling depot in Sherwood, such as electronics and fluorescent light bulbs, where traditionally hard-to-recycle items have been handled. But these programs have evolved over time, and we see Recycle Plus as the next evolution in this system. And I also just want to express my appreciation for the effort that city staff has put in working with myself and Dave from Waste Management to put together this proposal and get this process to where it is today. I'm eager to start providing these services in Tigard. We already have a list of 75 customers in Tigard who have expressed an interest because they've seen us offering this service in other communities. So we're excited to be able to reach back out to them and let them know that we are ready to go soon. So thank you for your time tonight and for your consideration of this new program.
Thank you for being here. Next we have Dave Hubes. Did I pronounce that correct? Huber. Yes. Okay. With Waste Management. Yes. If you can turn on your mic, please.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Lube, and good evening, councilors. Dave Huber, Senior Manager for Waste Management of Oregon, and just want to thank you for having this resolution in front of you this evening. We're excited to offer this added recycling service to the city of Tigard. This is a service that we've started providing in Washington County back in July, and as well as the city of Beaverton last November, and it's growing. It's also a service that just recently was added to Clackamas County and soon to be the city of Gresham. So. This is an exciting time with the Recycling Modernization Act. A lot of things changing, upcoming here in the next few years. But this is a great opportunity for customers in our community here in Tigard to, have those hard to recycle items, be able to recycle them here, with the two hauling companies here in Tigard. So, so with that, that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. City Attorney Rahala, do you have any response to any of the comments made?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Seeing that, I will close the public hearing and open the floor for council consideration of resolution number 23-04. Are there any comments or questions? No, I guess I'll just make the comment that this is a long time coming, and this feels like several years in the making, and it's exciting to be able to have a resolution for our community to have expanded recycling services if this shall pass. I don't want to prematurely say anything, but it's, I'm excited for our community. So if anybody has a resolution they'd like to make, I would entertain, or a motion, I would entertain it.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve resolution number 23-04.
Is there a second?
A second.
The resolution has been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution number 23-04, a resolution of the City of Tigard expanding residential recycling services and to modify the fiscal year 2023 fees and rate schedule.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Resolution 23-04 is adopted by unanimous consent of the council. Congratulations. That feels very anticlimactic for a very momentous thing that just happened in our community. Thank you. Okay. Again, yes. It's just one of those days today. Next on the agenda, we are considering a resolution for property tax exemptions for nonprofit low-income properties. And Confidential Executive Assistant Lutz will present the staff report. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor Lube and councilors. I'm Liz Lutz with the City Finance Department. And also remotely somewhere up there is Skylar Warren from Community Development. And we are presenting to you, hi Skylar. We are presenting a resolution that would grant an exemption from property taxes under Tigard Municipal Code Section 3.5 for 14 nonprofit low-income housing projects owned and operated by Community Properties for Affordable Housing, Resident Resources, and Reach Community Development. The total amount of property tax loss would be approximately $372,000. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
I don't have a question, just a comment. I was curious about the plans for the land that is yet to be developed into housing, and I know I've been gone all day, but that information was provided. So I just wanted to say thank you for that research and appreciated the information. So
I think that was Skylar that provided that. Thank you.
Skylar, thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you very much. With the $372,000, is that accounted for in the budget? Or is that something we're going to be looking at to reduce a certain amount by? Or I know it had already been exempted previously, but just wanted to see if there was some clarity there.
Right. We do this every year, and so it is not accounted for in the budget.
Great, thank you. Just thought it might be good to know for our citizens out there.
Right.
And if I may add, the $372,000 fiscal impact is countywide. So that's for all the taxing districts. The impact to the city of Tigard is about $66,000 for the year. So the other taxing districts like the Tigard-Tualatin School District and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue represent the remainder of that $372,000.
Thank you for that, Mr. Warren. Youth Councillor Nog?
I'm just intrigued, like what counts as a nonprofit that is also, is it nonprofit or low income, or is it nonprofit and low income?
It's low income
So-
housing. Yeah, go ahead, Skylar.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is defined in state law. There's enabling legislation, was adopted back in the 90s that allows for this. And there's several tax exemption programs that the city can participate in by opting in. This one in particular is for low-income housing, so that's going to be below 80% of the area median income. And it's also for properties that are owned or managed through a partnership by nonprofit. So the nonprofit will have some stake in the ownership or operation of the affordable housing.
It's a great tool in our toolbox to allow for affordable housing in Tigard to remain affordable by not having to pay those taxes, if that helps for additional context. Are there any other additional questions? Seeing none, yes, Councilperson Hill.
Sorry, it's not a question, but just if we pass this and along with Washington County today authorizing negotiation to purchase the Woodspring apartment, the senior low-income apartment, I just think it's a great day to be a Tigard resident. I'm very proud of the city, so thank you everybody for this effort. And I do hope that city staff will advertise the hell of this. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the wind out of my sails for the announcement I was going to make later in this meeting. No, I mean, it's worth discussing that it's been an incredible alliance and work on behalf of Washington County to get to the point where they can authorize this. But that's not what this specific resolution is. So does anybody have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 23-05.
I second the motion.
Will the city recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution 23-05, a resolution granting an exemption from property taxes under Tigard Municipal Code Section 3.50 for 6 nonprofit low-income housing projects owned and operated by Community Partners for Affordable Housing, 1 resident resources property, and 7 lots operated by Reach Community Development.
Thank you. Youth Councillor Nog for an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Resolution number 23-05 is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have a public hearing to consider ordinance correcting various street names. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify by phone, please call 503-966-4101 and or log in for video testimony. City Engineer Wisniewski, and Engineering Tech 2, Contras, will give the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor Lube and rest of the council. My name is Joe Wisniewski, City Engineer. Here tonight to present a ordinance to council for your consideration to assist with correcting various street names, and it's really focused on the suffix of the street names throughout the city. There is, I believe in your meeting guide, we had an added map for this evening, but it's 5 locations, and really the key point to make here is this is so that the county can be authorized to update their records to really be in aligned with what the property owners are currently using. So the result of this request would be that the property owners don't have to update any of their records or make any revisions on their end. It's simply to authorize the county to correct records. The major root of this is just years of finding errors in record keeping. Some of them are like where the plat got recorded where it would say court instead of loop or street. So I can go through the 5 locations if you would like me to go into that detail. But I think for tonight I would just like to ask what questions you might have for me based on the map that was provided and any public comment that we do receive tonight with the public hearing.
Okay. We will ask our questions in a minute. City Recorder Krager, I don't see anyone signed up to testify. Mr. Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or video requests to make comment?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. With that, I will close the public hearing. I will just say, I've always wondered what the difference between a street, an avenue, a lane, a circle, a court, a loop. Would you be able to just summarize that for us and anyone else? Are there specific rules?
So I think currently in today's method we don't have necessarily the rules like they may have used to have, but we try to fit the definition of them as much as possible. So if it's truly a loop where the street loops back on itself out to the same relatively starting point or the same street, that's more of a loop. If it's like a cul-de-sac or something that's more of a dead end, that's where we get into the court designation. Boulevard a lot of times is where we look at a little bit more of a heavier traveled street, but it has like that 3-lane segment with a center median. So there's some theory behind it. Lately, in more modern terms, it's a lot of times there's a difference between street and road, and that's between a city and a county is the majority of the designation there between street and road. So hope that helps a little bit.
It does, and honestly, it's really fascinating to hear because it's something that impacts us all the time, but I don't know that we know. That's the minutia of city work here, which felt terrible as it was coming out of my mouth. But yes, does anyone else have any questions? Yes, Council President Hu.
I just want to confirm the ordinance number is 23-02.
That's correct.
That's correct, okay.
Probably because I think it was supposed to be here last week.
You passed your first one last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, how do you change a street name?
So if property owners or anyone in the community wanted to request a street name change, they would have to petition the city to go through that process, and we would have to hold a public hearing similar to what we're doing tonight, notifying the impacted properties so that they would have the opportunity to comment and weigh into the decision process.
How many people do you need to sign the petition?
That is a great question, and I don't know. I don't know if we actually have that in city code. We can look into that for you, but I would most likely reference ORS statute on that. I don't know if city attorney, if we have any info on that, but sorry to put you on the spot, but I am.
That is not, of my vast legal knowledge, that is not something I have off the tip of my head.
We will be happy to look into that, though. It'd be good good trivia question to know.
I think that would be a good trivia question. Or maybe has any street in Tigard been petitioned to be changed? I'd be curious in general about that too. Councillor Shaw.
Well, perhaps I'm following the line of questioning. Is there a compendium or a history of how or why streets were named the way they were named? And I'm not asking one be created, I was just curious.
What I can do
I'm a
is
history
look
buff, so.
Yeah, we would be happy to look into that history to see if we have any background on where the street names are coming from historically. Currently, anytime there's a new development that comes in, the developers will propose names, and you never know what the root is. It could be, was it previously certain type of farmland or a homestead from somebody that they're naming it after. And then Oscar, that's with us tonight, he maintains a list of names already used in the county to make sure that we no longer have any duplicate names. And then we actually really look to make sure there's names that are not closely related to another name. So just a little bit of spelling change because it makes it difficult for first responders when someone calls in and they pronounce the name that might be off by a few letters, not sure exactly where they're at. So we do a lot of extensive review on the names and assure that we don't have duplicate use going forward.
Youth Councillor Nog?
Okay, I'm so sorry for asking this, but my friends and I had a theory that a lot of street names that are like named after numbers are the ones that, you know, people didn't really like and didn't take that much time to come up with cooler names. Is that true? Like, why are there certain streets that have like less cool names and are just numbers?
So typically, that's a great question. Typically, the numbered streets will start from your city center or intersection of Main Street downtown, and then they count by block, going up in sequence, going sequentially. Sorry about that. Away from the city center. So First Street, Second Street, Third Street. It's always fun. Sometimes there will be streets going one direction and avenues going the opposite. So some towns you can actually be at the intersection of First and First, or Second and Second, but it's street versus avenue, the opposite directions. And those are the kind of weird things I look at when I'm in different cities.
Not weird at all. You're in good company. I was going to say, I don't think you were prepared for the Pandora's box that you opened by bringing this forward. But this is all fascinating stuff to hear. Are there any additional questions? No? Okay. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 23-02.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder please read the number and title of the ordinance?
Ordinance number 23-02, an ordinance renaming a segment of 68th Avenue to 68th Parkway, segment of 174th Loop to 174th Avenue, cul-de-sac of Fairhaven Avenue to Fairhaven Court, segment of James Street to James Court, and Mara Lane to Mara Court.
Thank you. Will the city recorder conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councillor Nog for an advisory vote?
Youth Councillor Nog?
Yes.
Councillor Shaw?
Yes.
Councillor Singh?
Yes.
Councillor Wolf?
Yes.
Council President Hu?
Yes.
Mayor Lube?
Yes. Ordinance number 23-02 is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you so much. I feel like we learned a lot today. And next on our agenda is a Tigard Made update with Associate Planner Pollard, Economic Development Manager Purdy, and Assistant Community Development Director McGuire. Welcome.
Good evening. IT should be helping me with the slides, I believe. So could we bring up the slides for Tigard Made, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, City Councilors and Mayor Lube. My name is Hope Pollard, an Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. I'm here with Assistant Director of Community Development, Tom McGuire, and Economic Development Manager, Lloyd Purdy, to provide a follow-up briefing on Tigard Made. We came to you guys on February 21st for a joint briefing with Planning Commission. So we're here tonight just to follow up with some additional details, answers to your questions, and continuing to seek that policy direction from you all. So no official vote tonight, but we are asking for policy direction. Next slide, please. Once again, Tigard Made project aims to enhance job density and adapt nimbly to market changes by adjusting the zoning of our employment lands. This is just a real quick reintroduction at the beginning. Next slide, please. The project covers all the areas colored in red on this map. Once again, we're not requesting formal decision tonight, but we are requesting policy direction on whether we should move forward with creating code updates that prioritize job density and create some non-conforming situations. Next slide, please. The project is partially in response to an economic opportunities analysis, which is a report required by the state to estimate the amount of employment land necessary to accommodate employment growth over the next 20 years. We hired a consultant to complete this report in 2021, and they found that we are severely land constrained, that while we are estimated to need about 600 to 1,100 acres of land over the next 20 years, we have only about 230 acres vacant, partially vacant, or redevelopable. Next slide, please. Staff has worked to develop potential zoning solutions that prioritize job density and accommodate shifting development trends. We presented the concepts of these solutions to you in previous meetings and outlined them in further detail in the materials for this evening. These solutions will create some non-conforming situations, so again, we're here to ask, should we prioritize job density, and what should we do about non-conforming situations? Next slide, please. Quick refresher, here's the meaning of a non-conforming situation. Basically, in this case, it's a use that is currently allowed but would no longer be allowed with the potential zoning. These uses would be allowed to remain but not expand their physical footprint and could switch out with an identical use as long as there are no longer than 6 months vacancy between tenants. Next slide, please. In our last briefing, we introduced the potential zoning solutions. These solutions are based on the consolidation of our 9 existing employment zones into just 4 zones. This would simplify the code and it would prioritize job density overall. At the last briefing, staff was asked to return with additional detail on these zones and the code and a draft map of where the zones are being considered. So this, the potential map is before you on the slide right now. And I'd like to take this slide to touch on some of the specifics of the code ideas, following along with attachment 1 of your materials for this evening. So starting with the non-conforming uses section, we propose allowing longer than 6 months vacancy between tenants, somewhere between maybe 1 to 2 years instead. Next section is the base zones. The CG zone, shown in red on this map, would allow the same uses currently allowed in CG, that's commercial, general commercial. Think everything from mom and pop stores to big box stores. The new CG would also allow more uses such as industrial and warehouse and more residential as well. Next we have the MUE zone, which is shown in blue here. And that would allow the broadest range of low impact activity. It would allow everything from industrial maker spaces to office to retail and even a small amount of warehouse and offsite services. The IL zone, shown in gray, and IH zone, shown in darker gray, would allow pretty much only manufacturing, with the only exception being that in the IL zone there would be a very limited amount of employees serving retail allowed. I do also want to point out that you'll see another dark gray swatch on towards like the south of Tigard, and if you're familiar, that's the Durham wastewater treatment plant. So that's colored IH right here, but that's really just, we're kind of right zoning it just to kind of show that's the nature of the activity that's happening there. But that activity is actually governed by a plan district. So the regulations surrounding that specific area are not going to change. It's just going to be correctly labeled as heavy industrial. The third section of your attachment also gives a breakdown of some of the primary use standard changes. That table gives you an idea of where things will become prohibited, which means they'll be non-conforming if they're currently allowed there, and where things will be newly allowed in the city. The next section, our commercial land use standards, further spells out some of the use standard changes. Again, in the CG zone, there would only be more uses allowed there than currently are allowed there today. The MUE zone would limit commercial sales and services to 25,000 square feet, and warehouse and distribution and off-site services to 20,000 square feet. These square foot limits are still up for discussion, so we don't know that we've hit the right numbers just yet. We just think that there should be some sort of limit, and whatever limit we do land on can also be adjusted through the land use process with the provision of community benefits. Additionally, we propose a warehouse and distribution overlay, and that's highlighted in the hatched section of this map, where the existing square footage of warehouse and distribution would continue to be allowed going forward. And finally, in the industrial land use standards section of that attachment, we see the major changes to the industrial zones. Only manufacturing allowed, with a few exceptions in the IL zone. Next slide, please. We also provided some more detail in response to your specific questions in the materials we provided. In response to perhaps the biggest question, we provided a deeper look into how many businesses would be made non-conforming with these changes. While it's difficult to predict the number of non-conforming situations citywide, since much of the city will go to MUE, which allows most uses but with some square footage limits, and the tools we have available don't allow us to readily distinguish building size. But once again, however, the square footage limits would be adjustable through the land use process with the provision of community benefits. So citywide, non-conforming uses pretty much have some sort of out through the adjustment process. The only place where it's a little more, where it is more stringent is in the industrial focus areas. And this is where we have a breakdown for you on this slide. So in the industrial focus areas, we can predict those numbers of non-conforming situations. The breakdown is a little bit rough because it's based on business licenses, which is kind of a rough, imperfect tool, but this is what we have. So this estimates that out of the 2,300 acres of employment land in the city, about 1,343 acres and 1,136 firms are covered by MAID. 251 of these acres with about 104 firms and 2,220 employees are in the proposed industrial focus areas. About 85 firms with 1,450 employees would be made non-conforming. Again, just a rough tool, but that's your estimate. If this land were to transition to all manufacturing uses, it could accommodate about double the number of employees, about 5,200 employees. Again, zoning cannot guarantee any of these changes, but it can accommodate and encourage. This would be about 30% of the projected employment growth according to the EOA, that economic opportunities analysis that I introduced earlier. That would be accommodated by 11% of the city's employment land by promoting more job-dense industries in the specific locations. Next slide, please. So we had a very quick turnaround with this briefing from our last briefing, so we didn't get to include Planning Commission's recommendation in the AIS and the staff report to you this evening. But we did hold a briefing with the Planning Commission last week, and at that briefing, the Planning Commission recommended continuing with code updates and that advanced job density while increasing vacancy allowances between non-conforming tenants. And staff also recommends this approach. Next slide, please. Just a reminder on the schedule for this project, if we're directed to continue moving forward with these code updates that prioritize job density, we'll be coming back to you guys in fall or winter of this year with code for adoption, and then we'll be implementing in early next year. Next slide, please. This concludes our presentation, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the quick turnaround and coming back to us with additional information. I'd like to open it up for additional questions. Yes, Councilor Shaw.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hone in on a specific area, and that is 99 Durham, even south of Durham, and then up towards Royalty Parkway. The reason I'm honing in on that area is it tends to be surrounded by retirement communities, and they tend to be out walking, which is what we would like them to be doing since we're a pedestrian-friendly city. And my question is, would we be increasing, because that's in a CG zone, would we then be increasing the allowable uses that would include industrial and manufacturing? And if so, is there a concern, because right now it's high traffic, high density of walking, people tend to walk very slowly, tend to drive slowly, which is very good in that area. But again, I guess I'm voicing a concern that that area be rated as a CG zone, and I'd request that you reevaluate just because of the constituency that's nearby. But love to open that for any questions, I guess. Question to my question.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, that is something that we could consider, is looking more in the realm of MUE, even with like lower square footage limits. I think the way that we envision this for CG is pretty much just allowing it to continue functioning as is. But the development standards, so you guys also asked about vision last time we were here, and I did want to also highlight that we do kind of have a vision for each zone, and the vision for CG is allowing those auto-oriented uses to remain, like you do see in that shopping center. I think there's like some auto repair, there's some drive-throughs, there's some big box stores. So allowing those to remain, but containing them like within the CG zone, but also with new development encouraging more pedestrian friendliness and more residential friendliness. So we do have some development standards, if anything did newly develop there, that it would actually have to be more friendly to adjacent residential. And also with industrial uses, those, when they're located in a commercial zone, would be required to adhere to off-site impact standards that other, like industrial uses in the industrial zones will not have to obey. So there's some restrictions around it, but we can also evaluate a different zone for that area.
That'd be great if you could evaluate that, and if you have that vision and what would be codified as an off-site impact, I'd love to learn more about that as well. Thank you.
So, sorry, just to add a little bit to that. So we would be opening it up to allow industrial. Whether that actually happens is going to be pretty much a long shot. It wouldn't happen on its own. But if we do have a developer who's creative and wants to do a mixed project and have some light industrial, or it tends to be product assembly that doesn't cause odors and noise and your traditional, smokestack industrial type of thing. If that wanted to come in, then that would be allowed. And their business hours tend to be more like an office, so they probably generate less traffic than standard commercial does, except for maybe at the rush hour.
Yeah, thank you for the additional information. I just know it's also a very high traffic corridor with reduced lanes oftentimes because of flooding in that area too, and we have lots of rains now. So, but thank you. I appreciate that. Look forward to the additional information.
Youth Councilor Nug.
Okay, so I know historically when it comes to looking into zoning laws, oftentimes BIPOC and low-income communities have been disproportionately impacted by environmental concerns around the area. So I was asking, what were the active efforts taken to avoid this disproportionate impact when looking into the quality of residential living conditions near the industrial zones?
Thank you for that question. Yes. Well, I guess I'll start by saying that we did make efforts to reach out to BIPOC communities starting at the very beginning of this project, and including working with groups such as Adelante Mujeres and OAMI to make sure that it wasn't just like the frequent flyers who were participating in engagement with this project. We didn't get a whole lot of traction in that. But what we have actively tried, the way that we've actively tried to incorporate equity into this project has actually been by just promoting more industrial manufacturing jobs that have career pathways. So that's kind of the focus, that like the area where we thought that we could provide the most impact in terms of equity, because it is kind of tough to build equity into zoning. However, we did also consider what you just mentioned in should we build off-site impact standards into industrial uses, especially now that we're allowing them more broadly throughout the city. And I think that this is kind of a nice nexus between the question you asked last time too, of like, okay, yeah, like you want more offsite impact standards on industrial uses, but is that going to negatively impact the industrial users? So we really tried to walk that line. And that's why in the actual industrial zones, the industrial focus areas, they will continue to not have to obey like our nuisance laws, which are like noise, odor, things like that. And there's not as much residential around the industrial focus areas. There still is residential, but those are kind of existing circumstances today. There are things that we could maybe do to look into alleviating that a little bit more, but like I mentioned, it would be a tricky balance with the existing industrial users. But the compromise was, okay, at least in the commercial areas, let's add restrictions on these industrial users. So everywhere except for the IL and IH zones, industrial uses will be newly subject to more standards such as noise and odor.
And we also, where we could, we tried to essentially surround the industrial zones with the MUE, the mixed use zone, which has the industrial impact standards. So have that buffer built in as much as we could.
Yes, Council President Hu.
Thank you for forwarding all those surveys. It's very helpful with my understanding. And so just let's go start with the non-conforming use. So when you said no additional footprints, does that mean, how do you calculate that? Does that mean they can build upwards too, or is it just footprints means, go ahead.
Yes, they can build upward, just not expand their footprint. Like the footprint would be whatever is, yeah, they can't increase the ground floor area that is, the ground floor area that is covered by a building.
But they can still build up. Okay, interesting. And so I remember when working at the Tiger Triangle Linco, we have provision in there where it said that if you're non-conforming use building, if it was burned down, we still give you a grace period to build back to non-conforming use. Are you contemplating similar provisions to give them a grace period to build back if there's accident happening to the building?
Yeah, that's something we could consider. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm for or against that. I'm just one. Okay.
Yeah, it's totally, it's up for totally something we could incorporate.
Okay. So for MUEs, my understanding is that so MUE allows such limited residential use, including apartment. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and in the MUE it would be a little bit more limited than the CG. You could have first floor commercial and then just build residential on top. MUE would be a little more restrictive. We're still playing with what the right ratio should be, but it would be with a focus on employment. So maybe like a 35-65 split. But we've heard from some of our advisors recently that maybe 20% commercial is like the maximum that it could sustain, that a developer could sustain and still, make it pencil out. So maybe like a 20% commercial, 80% residential. There'd be just a more stringent split than in the CG, basically.
Okay. So for MUE, I would just like to echo Councillor Shaw's concern, which you briefly addressed with the CG and MUE, MUE's expanded use to accommodate light industrial and warehousing, because just the example in River Terrace, you don't have the map up there, which is the very left side, that the only CG zone which I remember Planning Commission approved last year. And when it was approved, my vision was, cute boutique shop with apartment on top. And now we are proposing to add light industrial and even warehousing. And that just gave me a pause. So if you were to consider going down that line, I would recommend you reach out to residents around MUE and get their input on what their visions are and what they're thinking, because I don't think River Terrace residents would like, I think they would like to buy diapers there maybe, but they may not want to see diaper being made there. Maybe that's a bad example, but so please reach out to residents around MUE, especially in River Terrace, to see how they feel about expanded use of. Go ahead, Tom.
We will certainly do that. But again, I want to say that by opening this up doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. So much depends on the market. And industrial land, industrial uses are at the bottom of the pyramid. So,
I understand that point,
so
but you
it
are
would have to
opening
be-
up for the possibility.
Yes.
So it is possible those will come in.
Correct.
So we have to prepare. So we don't want residents one day to realize there's a light industrial manufacturing moving next to the MUE, which is totally, I mean, that's a possibility. I know it's unlikely, but it's a possibility.
And I would push back on that by saying that meets some of our equity goals. So if we have, that's putting places to work closer to where people live. That's another option, another way to look at that.
And
we're actually making an effort to try to get away from this. All the residences are here, and all these other uses are here.
And that goes back to my main question, partly because I still don't feel like I have enough information about the equity goal, is that you're assuming, sorry if I'm being ignorant, that certain populations are suited for manufacturing job. But my understanding is that current light industrial zone can accommodate things like indoor trampoline place, a dance studio, but this proposing will push them out essentially. So what kind of value, how do you make the value judgments that light industrial is better for equity than dance studio, for example? So I'm just missing those information. So if you could provide those more information under your expert study on how that promote equity, I would really appreciate it. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure Lloyd can also speak to this in more detail, but so it's not that certain populations are more suited for manufacturing. I really want to avoid.
I know.
That line of thinking, because
I don't want to make that assumption.
That
Yeah,
line of
yeah,
thinking.
please,
Yeah,
please.
Because, yeah, I definitely want to make it clear that that's not what we are proposing or thinking. That's not where our thoughts are coming from. It's actually just that manufacturing jobs provide a greater density of career pathway living wage jobs.
Okay.
So it's that you can come into these jobs having no college education, having no pre-qualifications whatsoever, and make a living wage, and there's lots of pathways and trainings available in these industries to help you move up within the industry, having started with no pre-qualifications whatsoever. So it's just to help people get a start without, maybe they don't have money to go to college, or maybe they just have no interest in going to college, and they're greater density as well. And we saw that some of the counselors came with us on the BIAMP tour last year, and I think we saw that in action at BIAMP, where they had a really great density of jobs, and they had a lot of people who had moved up within the company and had started with just a high school education or less. And so that's really where we're coming from with that goal.
I would add to that, it also helps with providing opportunities for startup businesses. So we see a lot of that. There are several, I don't know if we want to call them industrial parks, but there's several areas that have very small square footage size. There's multiple ones, and there's a lot of small businesses getting started in those areas, and a lot of those businesses, some of them have grown and added employees and stayed in Tigard. Some of them have grown so much they had to leave Tigard because we don't have industrial land. So this Tigard seems to be an attractant for those, and so we want to encourage that and in some ways continue to allow that. And I want to emphasize, we're talking about manufacturing. These really aren't high off-site impact uses. They're inside a building. If it's in a mixed-use building that has housing on top and commercial on the bottom, and it's in the middle floor, you probably wouldn't even know what it was or be aware that it's happening there.
Okay. One last question. I asked you about, how different commercial zones like Washington Square and downtown, how that will be impact, and I appreciate the answers. They won't be, but I assume this is just a small piece of a bigger puzzle. So I understand that the home project's coming as well. So so I just want to, maybe this is unnecessary, but just want to encourage you to harmonize all of them together and see the bigger picture. And I assume you're doing that. So because I don't want this situation where, if a company wants to build a self-storage facility, say in downtown, they can still keep doing that. But if they do it outside of downtown, they have to build an MUE, or on top of an apartment or below apartment. So I want harmonization of the whole city while you move forward with Tiger Made. So thank you so much.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I really appreciate all your answers too, and the information you provided in the maps. It's been fantastic. Any concern with a majority of the C&E or C&G and the MUE being along 99 and us not owning 99? Obviously, it's the Oregon Department of Transportation, which gives us a little flexibility. So is this something that Dave Roth, who obviously is with the city and working on transportation, is this something he has reviewed as well, just so we know what the potential impact would be? Thank you.
Yeah, we coordinate with Dave throughout the project. We'll also be doing a transportation planning rules analysis before ODOT allows us to even move forward with this. So some of that will be the influence on 99W. And yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Just to give you a little more detail on that, the TPR, the Transportation Planning Rule Analysis, we have to do that, and it has to be approved by ODOT, and that specifically looks at impacts to ODOT facilities. So 99, 217, I-5, and all the ramps, on-ramps, off-ramps, and all the associated parts of that.
So is that something done prior to, before it comes back to the council, so we have an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have any confidence, may be a rather strong word, but that ODOT can accomplish this in a timely manner?
Yes, because we're relatively confident that this won't have major impacts, because things are mainly shifting around and not really growing. On the CG, yeah, we're allowing more, but it's not really a shift. So we've had conversations with ODOT already several times over the past couple years, just to make sure they're prepped that this is coming and make sure that we're doing it right. So because we're fairly certain it's not going to have major impacts, we're looking at doing the study internally, and we've already started to kind of have some of those talks with ODOT and say, okay, here's how we're thinking of it. What do you think? Is this going to be crazy? And them coming back and saying, no, it's fine. So general confidence, yeah.
If I could just piggyback on that for a second, I'm trying to think of some of the regional meetings that I sit in, and we constantly, as a region of mayors, talk about how 99 needs attention and it needs a more cohesive plan. And part of the reason that the 99 is on the lower end of the list is because of all of the different types of zoning, that it isn't actually ready to be looked at holistically and prepared in that kind of way. And so it would require all of the different jurisdictions along 99 to change their zoning. So, and thank you for asking your question, because now it's triggered this, to make sure that the zoning that we're looking at has 99 prepped for any future potential upgrades, so we can push on ODOT to say, we are ready, we don't have to make changes, we are already prepared for this, and maybe also talk with our partnering jurisdictions about what we've learned so we can get corridor ready, and not hear that zoning is prohibiting them from treating this corridor the way that it should be treated. Yeah. Any other? So I wanted, oh, good.
to say is thank you for all the information requests, and I don't have anything else to add, but I did want to acknowledge that you guys put in the extra work to send that, and I appreciated it very much. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, bringing us, we're very, very in the details, and I think this is really important, but bringing us back up of what are we trying to accomplish? And we look at Tigard, and a lot of our community members leave to work. And we want to talk about public transportation being better and being more walkable and being able to walk to work or being able to walk to recreate and do these kinds of things. But we do not have the infrastructure or the system in place for people to have the jobs to be able to live here, work here, recreate here, and not have to leave or not have to have a car. And so I think looking at this holistically, these are excellent goals to have more jobs in the city, to provide more of our community members an opportunity to live and work and recreate here. On the flip side, I also don't want to tell businesses that have started here in Tigard and have robust employment for whatever it is, that they are no longer welcome in Tigard. And so I think there is a fine line of balancing those things. And I hope that, I think these goals, encouraging more dense jobs, is absolutely the way in which we want to go for the kind of community that we want to build. But I also think we need to balance that out with making sure companies know that we are not kicking them out. They are still welcome here, and we are still willing to work with them within their space. Because I think of your question of they can go up but not out, and what a burden that could be on a business and the business expense of having to leave if they have property that they could put another building on to be able to stay in, rather than not being able to build up for their needs. And so how do we balance that, and what is the right amount of tenancy time? I think those are very specific questions, policy questions that we can answer along the way. But I want to center that my preference is, yes, more jobs. Let's look at this larger community vision, but also what is the right balance of not telling businesses they're not welcome here, because they are welcome here. We want them here. We thank them for the jobs that they're providing and the way that they're contributing to our community. So I want to say that very large picture without getting into the details. That's where I'm leaning in my goals. And so maybe check-ins along the way. I'm sorry. I've been doing a lot of talking today. So maybe some check-ins along the way of, hey, this is what we're thinking, or, you know, conversations or updates, so we can give feedback, so the next time we see you is not when it's like fully has a bow on it, of what that might be. And really reaching out to the businesses and asking, you know, non-conforming use, what's the right balance? Yeah, Council President Hu.
Sorry I forgot one comment. Because Mayor Loop remind me of, triggered me to think about being more welcoming, and that just made me question the prohibition of auto sale or lease at the MUE zone. Because I remember recently a mayor from one of those east cities where they have lots of car dealership, maybe Gladstone, he was pondering whether with the future model of car sales online with, you know, electric car, maybe it would be worth thinking about having like first floor showroom but have apartment up there. So right now in MU it's proposed outright prohibition. I'm not advocating either way right now, but just maybe you can take a look at what that mayor was talking about, you know, future model of auto sales and having showroom on the first floor and apartment on the top. So you know, more welcoming. Please don't shut that door just yet. So think about it. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Do you feel like you have the policy direction you need to continue?
I believe so. Yes. Thank you. The answer is yes. Prioritize, but let's be lenient with the non-conforming. Let's keep coming back with updates before we come back for adoption, and do more outreach, of course. Okay. Seeing lots of head nods. Yes, we have what we need. Thank you.
And thank you for all of your updates and all of your work and your explanations, in really helping bring us in the community along with you. Okay, next on the agenda is we are discussing the proclamation process with Senior Management Analyst Hendricks to present the staff report.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see you. My name is Nicole Hendricks. I'm the Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office here at Tigard. So, and Eric, if you don't mind, could you share the slides, please? Thank you. So I'm here to share a proposed process for handling our proclamations, and for those kind of tuning in at home, proclamations are an opportunity for community members to request the city recognize a day, a week, or a month in honor of a cause, a person or a group, or an occasion that has significance to our community. So during your council goal setting, it was agreed to remove some of that proclamation language from the council ground rules, and then following that with guidance from the mayor, and then exploring some examples from Beaverton and Portland and other cities, we developed the proposed process that is in your council packet tonight. So I'll provide that high-level overview of the process and the workflow. That's attachment A of your staff report, and that's what I'll show on the slide. So that's okay if we don't see the slides because it's in the packet. And I will note also in the staff report there's the proposed public web page that we plan to launch with the process, as well as a proclamation request web form so people can submit their requests through that form. So that accompanies this proposal. And our ask is that you provide input on the proposed process and just direction on next steps if we feel like we're ready to move forward with that process, or just incorporate some of your input from tonight. So with that, I'll just kind of give a high-level overview of the different phases that we're kind of proposing. So the submittal phase is the proposed kind of process that starts with all the requests being submitted through the web form, and with a preference that the requests are submitted 6 weeks prior to the requested proclamation date. Compared to other cities, that's a pretty big preference time. That's a pretty big turnaround time, but it really does help us accomplish the rest of the items in the workflow, including having time for the mayor to review, to go back and forth if there's edits, developing the proclamation, things like that. So it is just a preference. It's not a requirement, but we can ask, we can help. So that's kind of the first component. And so the web form also asks that the requester, for items such as like draft proclamation language, so we'll get that from the requester, and then also if they would like to be publicly recognized at a city council meeting. So questions like that are in the web form, and you have a link to that you can see. And then, so submitted forms are just automatically, immediately routed to the mayor and a staff member, and our team will kind of track the requests coming in and keep a status of those reports just to help keep everything kind of together. And then moving to the review phase. So so the proposed process provides like a couple weeks for the mayor to review, propose edits if needed, and then coordinate any revisions with the requester, or we can have a team member kind of coordinate those edits as well. And then once that review is complete, then we'll have the proclamations be decided on, which are at the discretion of the mayor. So she can approve with edits, or deny. And at that point, we can follow up with the requester and provide that reasoning. And at that point also, just for informational purposes, we'll also send an update to City Council of what proclamations are kind of in the queue, what's been approved, what's been denied, so you just know what's going on. And so, something's happening with the slides. Okay, cool. Thank you. So go ahead and scroll down to the third slide when you have a chance. That one is perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we've covered the submittals, the review, the decision, and now we're kind of moving on. If approved, then there's this coordination and action piece. So our team will finalize the proclamation for the mayor's signature, and only if requested by the submitter, prepare for a city council meeting, and then also if the requester is interested in having the mayor be at an event or things like that are relevant to the proclamation, that's also included in the web form as an ask. And then If it does go to council, the mayor can decide if you want to read the proclamation in full, if you just want to read the title, whatever seems more appropriate, or whatever the requester has indicated they want to see. And I think I saw a question from Council President Hu about just what does the proclamation state, and to follow up to that, it'll say something along the lines of like the mayor of the city of Tigard does hereby proclaim versus like city council. I think that was your question. And so if the so if the requester isn't interested in any public event or city council meeting, then it'll just be automatically routed to the mayor for a signature. A final copy will be signed and sent to them, and then we can also have a version printed as well if they want a printed version. And then we'll add it to our database, so it's available on our website as well. And I believe that's the kind of overview of the workflow. Like I said, there's the web form as well and the potential website that goes with it. So I'll stop there and happy to hear any suggestions or just guidance on whether we can move forward with implementation.
Are there any questions? I would just say I don't think the city of Tigard has really embraced proclamations in a way that other cities do, and I think we're missing out on an opportunity to really celebrate our community and see a bunch of cool stuff that happens. So really streamlining the process to make it efficient for some individuals who really just don't need it in front of council, and then also providing an opportunity if they want to come here and have a formal presentation, I think, and clear expectations of this is where you go and this is the process. For the first time that the city will have, I think it will be really helpful. So any questions, Council President Hu?
Yes, I 100% support mayor having the sole discretion with consent or help from the staff. So I took a look at the web form. I assume it's in the beta form.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, because what you mentioned that you give requester a opportunity to submit sample languages. I didn't see a field there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. And maybe you can ask them to explain why the proposed proclamation has significance to the Tiger community.
Yeah.
So you will give them the expectation that you will tell them that we expect them to, the mayor expect them to explain why. Yeah. And right now it doesn't have any. It doesn't translate the workflow that you just pretty picture. Mm-hmm. The different shade of blue. It's not translated into the form, so it's for transparency and expectation. So maybe translate that blue gray to the web forms that, in 1 week we'll contact you, or how long will this process take? Mm-hmm. And if you have questions, right now it doesn't have a contact information. Unless you want everybody to ask the mayor the question. I don't know if you want to do that. So just think of put yourself in the shoes of a requester who has no idea what this process is.
Right.
And how he or she will want to be educated on it. So
those are good input. And also I'll say the web form. So it looks a little simple, but it is logic based. So if you answered yes to a question, then you see another set of questions.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So
okay.
Some of the things that you hit on are listed.
Okay, good.
But I think, I'll double check and make sure we've incorporated what you've said. But some of the things are in there. I think there's a total of like 12 questions, but you only really see like 6 up front. And maybe that's something just to be transparent in the process of like, here are the 12 potential questions we can ask.
And
so it's not like, oh, I thought I was done.
And how soon you should expect to hear from us, and who you should contact if you have questions.
Great.
So just things like that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Youth Councilor Knock?
So I think this might be the senior in me talking, but what's the latest date somebody could propose a proclamation for it to be heard?
I mean, it could really be as close as possible, and I think that's one of the things of also allowing the mayor to do it and not having to wait for city council, is if you say, oh my gosh, I have this tomorrow, and you give me a call and we can rush to do it and take care of it. Okay. So our preference is to give time, but things happen.
And what's the earliest somebody could submit it?
Oh, yeah, you could submit it as early as you wanted
Okay.
to, because we'll keep a database and keep tracking them, yeah.
Councillor Shaw?
So this might be a dumb question, but is the proclamation on behalf of the city or is it on behalf of the mayor?
So I guess in the process we're proposing it would be on behalf of the mayor, but I guess that's open for discussion unless. I'm also looking at City Attorney Rahala because I don't know if that's best practices.
It's whatever council wants to
Okay,
make
it is what council wants. It's what council would like.
Yeah, I think the way that we're proposing it is on behalf of the mayor of Tigard to do this. I think there's certainly room, and there's circumstances in which I know other cities, like they have come and said, we would like council to do this and not just the mayor. And there's certainly space for that to happen too if they want it from the council and not just from the mayor. So I don't want to close that door by any means.
Great, that was gonna be my follow-up question, and this is beautiful workflow, by the way. But within the workflow, is there that option? So if an organization says, I really would like it to be on behalf of the full council because it's easier to go back to my funders and say, I've got the support of, the mayor and the council, thinking, is there that opportunity to slate that in somewhere?
So, yeah, I guess that's something that, I don't know if the web form's the best place for that, but that's something that maybe in the follow-up communications of asking, do you have a preference on, or maybe we do include it in the web form. But I think that just kind of, opens up the door more. So we can kind of explore how we want to do that. I would say probably leave it out of the web form, but it could be follow-up kind of discussion.
Yeah, and maybe a comment section when they talk about why
Yeah.
it could certainly be in there to discuss it.
Cool, thank you. And Mayor Luba, I was thinking the same thing. I would wait for that to become an issue instead of inviting the opportunity.
Right.
And if they have a comment section, because I think the intent is that you get a nod from the city, and if the mayor, carries that weight to create that, I think that's fine. And so I think I'm trying to keep it simple until it's a problem.
Yeah, and I will say it was a really cool opportunity to be a part of the Muslim Educational Trust 30th anniversary and to actually physically have it and present it on stage. It meant a lot to everybody in the room to have the city of Tigard do that. And it's a piece of paper, and it has a lot of goodwill and a lot of meaning. So I think it's a great win for the community.
Okay. I think I have what I need from you all, and I'll follow up on some of the specific suggestions just to make sure those are in the web form. Anything else?
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
We don't have any non-agenda items tonight, and we will go to City Manager Reinemer for an administrative report.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates. Due to the length of the meeting, I'll be brief and I'll share the remainder of my updates in my written update. What I really want to do is follow up on last week's announcement about the speed limit on Hall Boulevard. We talked about it was going to be reduced from 40 to 35. We then went to the state and requested it be further reduced to 30, and they agreed, and so that was a great win. The next great win is the new signs are going up on Monday. So we are not wasting any time here. The state's not wasting time, so kudos to them. And so because of that, we're working with the county, all of our other agency partners to make sure that they're aware, trying to find a way to get a press release out so the community is aware that way. Our PD will work with Washington County to make sure that the sheriff and his team are aware of it. So just for your reference there. The first 30-day period or so will be warning tickets. This is really an education purpose, right? Reason for that, we're trying to change behaviors, not necessarily issue tickets, and so that's how we'll proceed at the beginning. But the signs right now are planned to go up on Monday, and we'll continue to do what we can, working with ODOT, working with TTSD, working with others to make sure the word gets out to our community, our businesses, our residents, and those that travel that corridor. So thank you very much to ODOT and to all of you and those that have supported this. This is a really great win for our community, and one that we should continue to celebrate and to build off of in our other goals for Hall Boulevard. So that concludes my remarks tonight, and I'll share the rest in my written update this week.
Thank you. I just want to say on Hall Boulevard this morning, I was driving and somebody was going very fast, and in the back of my head I was like, just you wait, you're not going to be able to drive that fast anymore. I mean, it felt really unsafe. So I was just internally very excited. Thank you for your administrative report. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.